On today's panel discussion, we will be discussing the War Measures Act and the October Crisis. In October 1970, the Front de Libération du Québec, also known as the FLQ, kidnapped two government officials in Quebec. The FLQ was a national liberation movement, and their goal was to achieve Quebec independence by resorting to terrorism when necessary. The Quebec government demanded assistance from the army to help the Montreal police control the demonstration of the FLQ. The War Measures Act was proclaimed as a result. All civil rights were revoked. Today we have invited Jeremy Chamberford, Georgia Turcott, and Jim LaHaye to discuss whether the War Measures Act was necessary or not. This is Jeremy Chamberford, who is a lawyer working for the FLQ, and we have Georgia Turcott, a supporter for the War Measures Act, and Jim LaHaye, who is against the War Measures Act. Where do you see Quebec in the future?
As FLQ's lawyer and a proud supporter of their cause, we want Quebec to be a separate country with rich culture. We envision Quebec as a purely French-speaking country that is unaffected by the rest of Canada. We have confronted the government with our requests, and obviously it has not gone well, because with this confrontation with the war crisis, they have completely shut down our cause, so we have had to force ourselves to react drastically with our extreme methods.
Quebec should not separate in the future. Pierre Trudeau has very good plans for Canada, and Quebec separating is not one of them. While they may speak a different language and have a different history, they are still part of the Canadian nation. I agree that they should have rights protecting their language, but they should still remain a part of the Canadian nation. Quebec needs to be controlled because the violent way they are protesting right now will not benefit anyone in the future. In the future, Quebec will become a safer place because the War Measures Act has controlled the FLQ.
Well, in the situation that I'm in now, I just want Quebec to be more safer and more equal place than it is now, because it's total hokum that police can just walk around arresting people that have no good reason to be arrested for.
Was the War Measures Act appropriate during the October crisis?
Well, of course not. The government's show of force was completely unnecessary and only served to showcase the government neglect towards our cause. The government denied our simple requests and forced us to resort to extreme tactics. Our goal was to preserve French nationality, and there is no denying that the government had no interest in meeting that request. Sending soldiers to crush our revolution was much too severe. We are not terrorists, we are freedom fighters. And Jim and countless others were wrongfully arrested for believing in our cause. Our Constitution is based on rights, and revoking them goes against everything our country stands for.
Opinion polls in Quebec and the rest of Canada showed overwhelming support for the War Measures Act. In December 1970 Gallup poll, it was noted that 89% of English-speaking Canadians supported the War Measures Act, and 86% of French-speaking Canadians supported it. It wasn't that the FLQ goals were inhumane, it was the way they tried to accomplish their goals. They committed crimes of murder and kidnapping to try and get the government to do what they wanted. Because of these criminal actions, the act was necessary to control the situation and prevent more criminal action. This allowed Canadian Armed Forces to march in the city of Montreal and attempt to control the deteriorating situation. The FLQ was declared an unlawful association. This meant that under the War Measures Act, the military had full power to arrest, interrogate, and hold anyone that they believed was associated with the FLQ. The general threats and demands made by the FLQ, the federal government declared a state of apprehended insecurity under the act. The War Measures Act was not only appropriate but necessary. It was appropriate because the FLQ's actions were getting out of hand, and the measures taken were the only thing that would have worked. It was a forceful way to shut down the illegal actions of the FLQ.
In my opinion, no, it was not appropriate, because citizens like me were just taken captive for no good reason, and a lot of people just like me had to go through the same pain and agony that I had to go through, and it pretty much proved no point. So in my opinion, no, it was not appropriate for the October crisis.
How did this affect you personally?
Well, I've been a supporter for the separation of Quebec for many years. The FLQ did what other groups could never accomplish, and they opened the eyes of Canada and demonstrated that we were serious. I could never have predicted the swift and brutal tactic by the government. Many of my friends were dragged from their homes and arrested. I'm very lucky to have escaped this ordeal, and now I hope to defend them in courts for what the government has done.
When the FLQ started their unlawful approach to obtain their demands, I felt unsafe and worried that they would cause harm to the government and the citizens. I, along with many others, were very scared of what they would do next. If the government didn't stop them the way they did, by completely arresting almost everyone involved, I would have felt like they wouldn't have handled it properly. It is very scary and unsettling to know that there are people in your province that are willing to kidnap and murder to achieve their goals.
Well, the only way I think they changed me is just by putting me through the terrible experience that was being arrested and taken captive for no good reason besides trying to just stand up for my own rights as a citizen of Canada. I also really changed my view on the country in general. I didn't come to Canada to be arrested randomly. I came to country for freedom and democracy.
What could have been done that would have been best for you?
Alright, as a citizen of Quebec and a lawyer and a proud supporter of FLQ, what could have been done is our rights respected. We had one goal, and that is separation of Quebec, to prosper our culture and different nationalities. We do not want to be affected by the outside world, and we want our Quebec nation to prosper.
The War Measures Act was an excellent idea to get the FLQ under control. It was like we were at war with the FLQ, and during times of war, we've implemented this act to help protect our country. We used it during World War I and II for the same reasons, to protect our democracy and citizens. I would not change anything about this act. Canada has used it 3 times already, and it did not fail us. The act did exactly what we wanted, to stop the FLQ. While it may have seemed like they overreacted, they really didn't. Sometimes you need a strong approach to really stop the crimes that are taking place.
From my standpoint, in my opinion, what could have been the best for the thing that could have been the best for me was if the government would have give all citizens just a chance to talk and see what they think of the whole matter. There wasn't really much of a vote that's going on. It's mostly just crisis going on. So I feel like if there was more of a say from the civilians, I think it would have been a better thing to do than to just run around arresting people.
So today we have discussed the different effects that the War Measures Act has had on different people. These experts have used their knowledge to effectively demonstrate the War Measures Act and its effect on the FLQ. We've heard thoughts on whether the War Measures Act was appropriate or inappropriate. Thank you, Georgia, Jeremy, and Jim, for your ideas and opinions.